The Young and the Restless spoilers for Wednesday, August 26th suggest that Kyle Abbott may find himself walking a dangerous line once again. I think Kyle's latest news will leave Diane Jenkins Abbott on edge, especially when she realizes that his new business idea could easily turn into something much more personal. Victoria Newman is apparently proposing a Vibrante relaunch, believing that revisiting Audra Charles's old rivalry concept could generate enough attention and buzz to make the brand relevant again. On the surface, I can see why the idea might make sense from a business perspective. However, given everything that has happened between Kyle, Audra, Claire Newman, and the Newman family, I was wondering if there could be more underneath this proposal than just a smart marketing strategy. Claire may have the same concern. She will question whether this is really some kind of sneaky revenge plot, but Kyle will insist that it is not his idea. According to Kyle, Victoria is the one who approached him with the suggestion. Still, to me, that does not necessarily mean the situation is harmless. Kyle has a history of letting personal conflicts influence his decisions, and sometimes the most dangerous plans are the ones that begin with perfectly reasonable intentions. Later, Diane may become especially concerned once Kyle presents Victoria's plan to her and Jack Abbott. I think Diane could immediately sense the potential for this situation to spiral out of control. Even if Kyle genuinely believes he is simply following Victoria's lead, Diane may worry that old resentments could eventually turn the Vibrante relaunch into a way for Kyle to settle scores. That could prompt Diane to warn her son not to provoke Victor Newman's wrath again. She may also remind Kyle that hurting Victoria would have consequences beyond business or family politics. Claire certainly would not approve of Kyle using her mother as part of some revenge scheme, and I think Diane knows that Kyle could lose far more than he realizes if he lets anger take control. Meanwhile, Jack will have his own complicated conversation with Lily Winters. Lily will wonder whether Jack is finally ready to accept her offer to pay off the loan and put an end to all the Chancellor drama. Honestly, I think Jack would love nothing more than to close the book on this entire mess. But there is one major problem: Billy Abbott. Jack may not be willing to accept Lily's proposal if doing so means completely infuriating his brother. The situation could put Jack in an impossible position because no matter what he does, someone is likely to feel betrayed. Ultimately, Jack may reject Lily's offer and tell her that Billy is the person she will have to deal with. Lily could then turn to Jack for advice, possibly wondering whether he has any idea how to handle his unpredictable brother. To me, that conversation could be very interesting because Jack understands Billy better than almost anyone. The problem is that understanding Billy and controlling Billy are two very different things. Jack may know exactly why his brother is acting this way, but that does not mean he has the power to make him stop. Over at Nick Newman's rehab facility, another important family confrontation is on the way. Victor Newman will arrive for the visit that Nick requested, and I think this could be one of the more emotional moments in the episode. Nick is still struggling to come to terms with his addiction, but he also knows he cannot keep shutting out the people who care about him forever. After having an emotional heart-to-heart with Nicky Newman, Nick may finally feel ready to face his father. I think Nick will be honest with Victor about how difficult this entire experience has been. For someone who has spent so much of his life trying to handle everything on his own, leaning on Victor for support could be a major step. Nick may finally admit how overwhelmed and frightened he has been, giving Victor an opportunity to be there for his son in a way that Nick truly needs. At some point, Victor may also make a cryptic confession about a plan he has already set in motion to deal with Matt Clark once and for all. That is where things become especially interesting. I was wondering if Victor could be trying to reassure Nick that, once he recovers and eventually returns home, Matt will no longer be a threat hanging over the family. Of course, this is Victor Newman, so when he says he has a plan, I think everyone should probably be concerned about what that plan actually involves. Victor does not usually make empty promises, especially when someone has threatened his family. The Young and the Restless spoilers suggest that Matt may soon find himself trapped in a nightmare of his own making, thanks to Victor. Kyle may be trying to navigate a risky business move, Jack may be caught between Lily and Billy, and Nick may finally be opening up to his father. But Matt could be the one who discovers just how dangerous it is to become Victor Newman's target. I think Audra Charles may finally be on the verge of getting exactly what she has been waiting for, a chance to strike back. For a while, Audra and Claire Newman were locked in a fierce feud, but in recent months, things have been surprisingly quiet between them. Still, to me, that peace may not last for long. Right now, Audra is focused on her role at Spectre Charles Media, but some major developments could soon pull her attention back into old territory. I was wondering what Audra's reaction would be if she learns that Victoria Newman is bringing back Vibrante, the very company Audra once had big plans for. Y&R fans will remember that Victor Newman was originally going to fund Vibrante for Audra, but there was a major condition attached. Audra was supposed to seduce Kyle Abbott away from Claire. However, the entire agreement eventually fell apart, and Audra lost the opportunity to build the company she considered her own. That is why I don't think Audra will be happy watching Victoria step in and take control of Vibrante. To Audra, that company was her baby, and I imagine it could be difficult for her to watch Victoria run with an idea that Audra once hoped would be hers. The situation could become even more frustrating for Audra because Victoria apparently wants to create a fake rivalry between Vibrante and Jabot. Ironically, that was exactly the kind of strategy Audra had planned to use with Kyle. So, from Audra's perspective, it may feel as though Victoria is not only taking her company, but also stepping into the role Audra once envisioned for herself. And then there is Kyle. Although Audra has been acting as if she has moved on, I'm not entirely convinced that all her feelings for Kyle are gone. There was clearly an attraction between them, and these two always seem to find their way back into each other's orbit sooner or later. Now, if Victoria and Kyle begin mixing business with pleasure behind closed doors, Audra could find herself in the perfect position to uncover a secret. What if she witnesses one of their private encounters? What if she catches them together and realizes there is more happening between them than anyone else knows? I could easily see Audra taking a photo or recording a video as proof. And if she gets that kind of evidence, the big question is what she does with it. One possibility is that Audra runs straight to Claire with the information. That would give her a chance to blindside Claire and reopen their old feud. It could also be a way for Audra to get revenge on Kyle, Victoria, and especially Claire, for all the times Audra felt like she was being challenged or humiliated. Of course, Audra could also try a different approach. A blackmail scheme would certainly fit her more calculating side. She might realize that a secret involving Victoria and Kyle could be valuable and decide to use it as leverage. But honestly, I think the temptation to expose the scandal to Claire could be even stronger. If Audra learns the truth, she may finally have the perfect weapon to cause chaos inside the Newman family. Claire could be blindsided, Kyle and Victoria could be exposed, and Audra could suddenly find herself right in the middle of another explosive storyline. I may be wrong, but to me, this could be a reminder that Audra Charles is never far from trouble. She may try to focus on her new career and move forward, but when an opportunity for revenge appears, I'm not sure she will be able to resist it. And if Audra gets the chance to unleash some serious chaos, I think Genoa City should be ready. I think The Young and the Restless may be setting the stage for some truly dangerous developments in Genoa City, especially when it comes to Matt Clark and Patty Williams. Fatal storylines are always a possibility in this town, and with both of these characters potentially heading toward chaos, I can't help wondering if one, or even both, could be facing a grisly end. As the week of August 24th to 28th winds down, Matt and Patty are expected to appear in new scenes together. Phyllis Summers is already on the verge of panicking over Matt's disappearance, but I think Victor Newman may be responsible for putting an end to Matt's freedom, at least temporarily. It sounds like Matt could be locked away in the same maximum security psychiatric ward where Patty is being held. And honestly, to me, that immediately raises the possibility of an alliance between these two troubled characters. Once Matt is placed in Patty's orbit, I could see the show eventually setting up an escape. If that happens, Genoa City could be in serious trouble. The timing is especially interesting because Jack Abbott and Diane Jenkins Abbott are preparing for a romantic getaway. Just as their trip begins, Patty is set to reappear on screen. I may be wrong, but that feels like more than a coincidence. I was wondering if Patty could break free and bring chaos straight to Jack and Diane's doorstep. After all, Patty has a long and complicated history with Jack, and Diane has certainly become part of that conflict as well. If Patty escapes, the possibility of Matt escaping with her becomes even more intriguing. That could leave both characters running loose at the same time, creating two separate threats, or perhaps one dangerous partnership. Of course, it's possible Patty could simply be recaptured and sent back to the psychiatric facility once this storyline is over. But I didn't realize how repetitive that could feel until I thought about the show's history with her. We've already seen versions of Patty escaping, being arrested, and ending up locked away again. So to me, if the writers are bringing Patty back for another major storyline, maybe this time the ending will be more permanent. Could Patty be killed off in one final confrontation with Jack, Diane, or perhaps both of them? I think that's a real possibility. Even if the show chooses a presumed death scenario rather than a confirmed death, Patty could still face a dark and dramatic fate that finally closes this chapter. The same could be true for Matt. If The Young and the Restless decides it's time to end Matt's storyline for good, this could be the perfect opportunity for him to return fully to his darker side. Matt could become more dangerous than ever, make one final disastrous move, and ultimately head toward a deadly departure. And maybe that is exactly where this is going. Whatever happens, I think an alliance between Matt and Patty can only lead to trouble. Neither character is known for bringing peace to Genoa City, and putting them together could create the kind of unpredictable danger that affects several major players. Some dramatic climaxes may be brewing, and I wouldn't rule out the possibility that Matt and Patty are both being positioned for fatal exits. Whether one survives, both survive, or both meet a tragic end remains to be seen. But one thing seems clear to me. Their next moves could put them in serious danger. The Young and the Restless may be building toward a disturbing and potentially deadly chapter for Matt Clark and Patty Williams. I think the question now is not simply whether they can escape, but whether they can survive whatever comes next. I think the August 24th, 2026 episode of The Young and the Restless is setting several major storylines in motion, especially where Kyle, Victoria, and Claire are concerned. After all the recent Newman family drama, Victoria's latest proposition to Kyle could either become a smart business move or create an entirely new set of problems. Victoria and Kyle once again run into each other, and they both acknowledge how often that seems to happen. Victoria quickly reveals that she has a proposition for him. She has found new information about Vibrante, which naturally brings them back to the original plans Kyle and Audra had for the company, and their attempt to capitalize on Aristotle Dumas' reputation. Now Victoria wants to bring Vibrante back, but without Audra. Kyle immediately recognizes the obvious problem. Vibrante would be competing with Chabot. Interestingly, Victoria seems to believe that is exactly what she wants. At first, Kyle thinks she may be tempting fate, but Victoria insists that the conflict would only be for appearances. To her, a relaunch could help shift public attention away from all the recent controversy surrounding the Newman family business. Still, Kyle is understandably hesitant. I was wondering if Victoria really believes she can control the situation once Vibrante is competing with Chabot, because business rivalries rarely stay pretend for very long in Genoa City. Kyle also wants to know where Victor stands, which is probably the biggest question of all. Victoria insists that she can handle her father. She wants Kyle to give her a simple yes or no, and she even promises that working with her would be pure joy. Kyle says he will have to discuss it with Jack, but he is clearly intrigued. The two shake hands on that just as Claire arrives. Claire immediately senses that something is going on. Victoria is vague about what she and Kyle were discussing before making a quick exit. Kyle then asks Claire how things are going with Holden, while Claire asks about Harrison. However, she soon gets back to the subject of her mother and wants to know exactly what Kyle was discussing with Victoria. When Kyle explains that Victoria wants to relaunch Vibrante, Claire thinks it is a terrible idea. She even wonders if this is Kyle's sneaky way of getting revenge on the Newman family by using Victoria. That accusation could become very important. Claire clearly does not trust this partnership, and I think her concerns may not be entirely unfounded. Even if Kyle has no intention of getting revenge right now, putting him and Victoria in direct competition with Chabot could easily create conflict with Jack and the rest of the Abbott family. Meanwhile, Jack and Diane are dealing with their own family problems. They discuss Billy's determination to move full steam ahead with Chancellor, and Jack explains that Lily has offered to pay off the debt. Diane wonders how Jack's sisters would feel about that decision. Jack assumes they would support it, but Billy could be furious. Jack knows that if Billy blames him for losing Chancellor again, it could permanently damage their relationship. Diane does not think that would be fair, but Jack still feels he needs to discuss Lily's offer with the family. The conversation eventually turns to Billy himself, and how frustrating he can be. Diane reassures Jack that when it comes to his family, he probably knows best. Jack, however, seems exhausted by all the drama and wishes it would finally end. Diane has a simple solution. The two of them should get away together. That idea immediately makes Jack smile. After everything they have been through, he is grateful for the progress they have made. They even look back on their recent attempts to travel, which did not exactly go as planned, and decide that perhaps this time they should leave Kyle in charge and focus on themselves. However, there is still one complication. Jack remembers that he promised to help Nick. Diane quickly points out the problem. She asks whether doing a favor for Nicky is really more important than spending time with his wife. Jack hesitates and tries to explain that he is helping Nick, not Nicky. Diane's concern appears to go deeper than jealousy or frustration. After everything that has happened, she worries that another near-death incident could separate them again. Jack promises her that will not happen and assures her that he values her feelings too much to take their relationship for granted. I think Jack is being sincere, but his desire to help Nick could still place him directly in the middle of another Newman family crisis. Given Victor's recent opposition to Jack becoming Nick's sponsor, this situation may become even more complicated. Overall, this episode appears to be laying the groundwork for multiple conflicts. Victoria's business proposal could put Kyle in an awkward position between the Newmans and the Abbotts, while Claire already seems suspicious of her mother's motives and Kyle's intentions. At the same time, Jack is trying to protect his marriage to Diane while remaining loyal to his promise to help Nick. To me, the biggest question is whether these characters can really keep business, family, and personal loyalties separate. In Genoa City, that almost never happens, and this time the consequences could be especially serious. I think this sequence works best when you look at it as a series of characters being forced to decide whether they can finally let go. Jack, Diane, Nicky, Victor, Nate, Devin, Lily, and Stephanie are all dealing with the same question in different ways. Can they stop trying to control everything and allow the people they care about to find their own path? Jack and Diane are still focused on Lily's offer, and Diane is clearly trying to pull Jack back from getting involved in Billy's problems. Jack admits that, realistically, the best thing would be to let Billy and Lily work things out themselves. But Diane knows Jack well enough to understand that his good intentions often come with consequences. To me, her point is that Jack has a habit of stepping in to help, only to end up being blamed or taken advantage of. Diane keeps insisting that Billy needs to handle this situation on his own, and eventually Jack agrees. For now, they seem ready to step away from everyone else's drama and imagine creating their own private little paradise. But knowing Jack and Diane, I'm not sure that peace is going to last for very long. Meanwhile, Nikki arrives looking for comfort from Victor after visiting Nick. She explains that Nick called her in, and while he seemed a little better, she could still recognize the pain and struggle he's going through. Nick wants to see Victor in the morning, and Nikki makes it clear that their son needs all the help he can get, including a strong sponsor. That immediately brings Jack back into the conversation. Victor is irritated because Jack already came by earlier offering to help. Nikki confirms that she wants Jack to be Nick's sponsor, but Victor refuses to accept it. He believes Jack is simply looking for an opportunity to get involved, and his hatred of Jack makes him unwilling to trust his motives. The argument between Nikki and Victor feels bigger than just Jack. They start bickering over who keeps bringing him up, but Nikki has clearly reached her limit. She reminds Victor that Nick's needs should come before their personal issues. In her mind, their son's recovery has to matter more than Victor's feud with Jack. Nikki also reminds him that their love is supposed to be stronger than his hatred. Victor does admit that he's grateful he and Nikki have reconciled. Nearly losing both her and Nick was devastating, and I think that fear is still driving him. He cannot bear the thought of going through something like that again. But he also convinces himself that Nick is already getting better without Jack, which gives him another reason to reject the idea. Victoria then walks into the middle of the argument, and Nikki immediately asks her to take a side. Both parents explain their positions, but Victoria comes up with the simplest answer: let Nick decide for himself. Nikki agrees immediately, and even Victor finally says he'll consider it. Whether he actually follows through is another question, but at least the door isn't completely closed. Over at Nate's place, Stephanie and Nate are settling into a much calmer and more personal conversation. After talking about walks, cat naps, and coffee that Nate insists is better than hospital coffee, the conversation turns toward medicine and the reasons they both chose this profession. Stephanie explains that she has always wanted to help people and animals. She has always believed she had the temperament for it, and she clearly takes pride in her bedside manner. She and Nate realize they have something else in common too. Neither of them was ever squeamish, and both seemed fascinated by fixing people, even as children. They had toy doctor kits and stethoscopes, and medicine was almost built into their personalities. Stephanie admits that she had doubters along the way, but she is proud to be what she calls a superhero without a cape. To her, being a doctor means bringing comfort, care, and even a little joy to the people who need it most. For Nate, medicine has always felt like a calling, and this conversation seems to remind him of where that passion originally came from. He remembers a stupid motorcycle accident in high school involving himself and a friend. In the middle of that chaos, Nate managed to bandage his own wounds while staying calm and in control. That moment felt right to him. I think Stephanie is helping Nate reconnect with the version of himself that existed before all the complications, disappointments, and detours. She wants him on her team, and Nate makes it clear that he's committed to helping, whether he returns to being a surgeon or not. The timing of their meeting seems almost fortuitous. They share a genuine moment, but Stephanie eventually decides it's time to leave. Nate walks her to the door, and their goodbye becomes adorably awkward. Then Stephanie runs into Devin and quickly escapes onto the elevator. Devin heads inside and immediately tells Nate how impressive Stephanie is. From there, the conversation shifts to the Chancellor situation. Devin is worried about just how far his sister might be willing to go to keep control of the company, and both men start questioning whether fighting for Chancellor is really worth all the damage it could cause. But Devin is genuinely happy about Nate returning to medicine. He wants this to happen for him, and he is willing to do whatever he can to help. They also finally apologize for the ways they have hurt each other. It feels like they are choosing to leave the past behind and move forward. Of course, that brings them right back to Lily. They start wondering how they can convince her to let go of her fight. Elsewhere, Lily runs into Stephanie while Stephanie is picking up treats for the staff. Their conversation turns to Nate and the possibility of him returning to medicine. They also discuss Holden and his struggle to find his place. And that seems to be the underlying theme running through all of these scenes. Nick is trying to find his way back. Nate is trying to rediscover his calling. Holden is still searching for his place. Jack is trying, at least for the moment, to stop interfering. Lily is being pushed to reconsider how far she wants to take her fight. I may be wrong, but to me, the bigger question now is whether any of them can truly let go of control long enough to allow the people around them to make their own choices. The Young and the Restless spoilers for the next 3 weeks, from August 24th through September 11th, suggest that Genoa City is heading into some seriously chaotic territory. Twisted schemes, dangerous escapes, shocking romantic hookups, and some potentially devastating fallout are all on the horizon. I think the week of August 24th to 28th could get especially interesting for Kyle Abbott and Victoria Newman. A work-related proposition is expected to leave them alone together, and it apparently won't take long before the situation turns passionate inside the Jabot office. To me, this feels like the beginning of a storyline that could spiral quickly, especially considering how complicated their personal connections already are. Meanwhile, Lily Winters will get confirmation that Holden Novak is truly in her corner before she faces off once again with Billy Abbott. I was wondering whether Lily might finally be reaching her breaking point with Billy, because their conflict doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. Phyllis Summers will also be dealing with a major crisis when Matt Clark suddenly disappears from Genoa City. Naturally, Phyllis may immediately assume that Victor Newman is behind it, and she'll reportedly confront him with her accusations. However, Victor doesn't appear to be in the mood to give her any real answers. Later, Matt is expected to reunite with Patty Williams, and it sounds like Victor's retaliation could land Matt in the same maximum security psychiatric facility as Patty. But knowing these two, I don't think keeping them locked away necessarily means the danger is over. Jack Abbott and Diane Jenkins Abbott will be hoping for a more romantic escape as they continue reconnecting through a vacation together. However, during the week of August 31st through September 4th, their getaway could take a very dangerous turn. If Patty and Matt manage to escape the psychiatric facility together, Jack and Diane's vacation may suddenly become anything but relaxing. Patty could have her own plans for ruining their time together, and I can easily imagine Matt becoming a much bigger problem as well. There is also the possibility that Matt could secretly contact Phyllis and reveal what Victor has supposedly done to him. But I have to wonder whether Matt will simply be looking for Phyllis's help or whether he'll decide to seek revenge himself. Could his darker and more sinister side be ready to return? I think that is a real possibility, and if so, Victor may have created an even bigger enemy. During the week of September 7th to 11th, Nate Hastings could finally receive some good news. If his surgical recovery continues successfully and he regains the full range of motion in his hand. If everything goes well, perhaps this could bring him and Stephanie Simmons even closer. A celebratory kiss may not be out of the question. Elsewhere, Sharon Newman may start becoming increasingly concerned about the growing connection between Nick Newman and Marie Kirkland. Their time together in rehab is expected to bring them closer, and I think Sharon may struggle with some understandable jealousy and worry. The bigger concern, of course, could be whether Marie might somehow contribute to another relapse for Nick. Sharon may be watching the situation closely, and she could have every reason to fear that this connection is becoming more complicated than she expected. Then there is the situation between Kyle and Victoria. Will their passionate encounters become a regular part of their lives? If they continue sneaking around, the chances of getting caught will only increase. I think it may only be a matter of time before Claire Newman discovers what Victoria and Kyle have been doing. And when that happens, the fallout could be explosive. Victoria and Kyle are clearly crossing a dangerous line, and secrets like this rarely stay hidden in Genoa City for long. Overall, the next 3 weeks appear to be setting up plenty of chaos across several major storylines. Between Matt and Patty potentially causing more trouble, Jack and Diane facing danger, Sharon worrying about Nick, Nate looking toward a possible recovery, and Kyle and Victoria risking exposure, the Young and the Restless could be heading into a very dramatic stretch of episodes. Maybe I'm right or maybe I'm wrong, but I think some of these secrets and schemes are about to create consequences that no one involved will be able to control. Nick's travel idea on the Young and the Restless may have revealed a much bigger truth than anyone expected. During Sharon's recent visit to rehab, Nick began looking toward his future. And what I find interesting is that he did not just imagine his own recovery. He pictured taking Sharon and the kids to California. Sharon immediately loved the idea, but I think it is still too early to call this a full-blown romantic reunion. Even so, the moment speaks volumes. When Nick pictures a stable and peaceful future, Sharon is right there beside him. To me, that says their connection runs much deeper than either of them may be willing to admit. Their definition of family is still deeply connected, and this California dream may prove that no matter how complicated their history becomes, Nick and Sharon still see each other as part of the same emotional foundation. Nick has spent decades trying to fix everyone else. He has taken on the role of the Newman family hero so many times that it has practically become part of his identity. He steps in, solves the crisis, protects the people he loves, and carries burdens that were never entirely his to carry. But this rehab stay seems to be forcing him to look at himself for once. And when Nick started looking beyond his present trauma and imagining a healthier future, he looked at Sharon. That is what makes this moment so important. Nick did not simply say he wanted all of his children together. He imagined Sharon being there too. I think that suggests he connects his sense of mental health, stability, and emotional wellness with Sharon in a way that he may not even fully understand yet. To Nick, Sharon may represent something familiar, safe, and grounding. Sharon also did something during her visit that very few people can do. She called Nick out on his savior complex. She knows he has a habit of focusing on everyone else's problems because dealing with his own pain is much harder. But Nick did not react the way he might have with someone else. He did not become defensive. He did not shut down. Instead, he listened. To me, that is one of the biggest clues about the bond between them. Nick trusts Sharon enough to let her see his flaws. He can be vulnerable around her, even when the truth is uncomfortable. And perhaps that is why, when he imagined escaping to California, Sharon was part of that vision. By inviting her, Nick may have been choosing the one person who knows the real him. For years, outside forces have tried to pull Nick and Sharon apart. Relationships, family drama, betrayal, scandals, and the endless chaos of Genoa City have all created distance between them at different times. Yet somehow, their idea of family has remained surprisingly firm. That connection seems to survive even when the romance does not. Nick imagined a peaceful life away from the drama, and Sharon stepped into that picture almost naturally. Neither of them needed to define what their relationship would be. They did not need a dramatic declaration of love. Their emotional connections seem to work without words. And I think that may be exactly why this storyline feels so significant. The California plan is not just about taking a nice vacation. It could represent something much bigger for Nick. He has spent decades carrying the weight of the Newman family, from corporate wars to personal scandals and every crisis in between. Maybe Nick is finally tired. Maybe he wants a clean slate. And maybe California represents his desire to escape the pressure and find peace somewhere far away from the constant chaos. But the biggest detail is still Sharon. Nick does not just want to run away from the drama. He wants Sharon beside him when he imagines a different life. To me, that is the real truth hidden inside this simple travel idea. Sharon may represent freedom for Nick. She may represent safety. She may represent the peace he has been searching for in all the wrong places. Of course, I may be reading too much into one conversation, and it is always possible that the show is not ready to push Nick and Sharon into another romantic reunion. But I do not think this moment was meaningless. When Nick looked toward his future, Sharon was already there. And on The Young and the Restless, that may be more revealing than any love confession. Laura Lee Bell has always been considered soap opera royalty, and honestly, I think there is no denying that she was born into one of the most influential families in daytime television. Her parents, William J. Bell and Lee Phillip Bell, created the legendary worlds of The Young and the Restless and The Bold and the Beautiful. Laura Lee has always been proud of everything her parents accomplished, but as she has grown older, it seems she has developed an even deeper appreciation for everything they managed to do. Back in 1973, William and Lee Bell made their mark on daytime television with the creation of The Young and the Restless. The show became a massive success for CBS and eventually helped turn the Bell family into true icons of the soap opera world. But behind the scenes, William and Lee were doing more than running a successful television series. They were also raising 3 young children. To me, that is what makes Laura Lee's reflection on her parents especially meaningful. Creating and producing a major soap opera is already an enormous responsibility. Raising 3 children at the same time sounds like an entirely different full-time job. Yet, according to Laura Lee, her parents somehow managed to balance both worlds. As a child, Laura Lee was simply too young to fully understand everything her parents were doing. Like many children, she saw her parents as mom and dad first. But now that she is older, she can look back and see just how much they were juggling. I appreciate my parents more because of all they juggled as mom and dad and creators of the show, Laura Lee told TV Insider. I was wondering how anyone could possibly maintain that kind of balance, especially when a daily soap opera can be such a demanding business. There is always another episode to produce, another storyline to develop, and an enormous cast to manage. But despite the pressure and demanding schedules, William and Lee Bell apparently worked hard to give their children as normal a life as possible. That may be one of the things Laura Lee appreciates most today. She and her brothers rarely saw their parents overwhelmed. We very rarely saw them frazzled or overwhelmed, and that was such a gift, she explained. I think that really says a lot. William and Lee may have experienced stressful moments behind the scenes, because who wouldn't in that situation? But they somehow protected their children from feeling the weight of those pressures. To Laura Lee, that must have been a gift she did not fully understand until later in life. Of course, Laura Lee eventually got a first-hand look at her parents' professional world when she joined The Young and the Restless as Christine Blair. Since 1983, she has brought the beloved Genoa City character to life, taking Christine from a young model to a respected attorney and making her one of the show's most recognizable characters. And I think this experience probably changed Laura Lee's perspective even more. She was no longer simply the daughter of 2 legendary soap opera creators. She was now part of the complicated machine that made a daily drama work. It's not easy to weave a cast this big in and out and make it emotional and happy and sad and scary, Laura Lee explained. So to think that I was a product of that genius, and my mom being equally genius in her way, I'm very grateful. To me, that statement really captures how much her perspective has evolved. As a child, she may have taken her parents' work for granted simply because it was the world she grew up in. But after spending decades in daytime television herself, she now understands just how difficult it is to create compelling stories, manage a large cast, and keep audiences emotionally invested year after year. Laura Lee has also admitted that there was a time when she shied away from her famous family heritage. Perhaps she wanted to establish herself as her own person and build her own career without constantly being defined by her parents' legendary accomplishments. And honestly, I can understand that. Being the child of two major figures in the industry could bring a lot of expectations. But over time, her feelings changed. Today, Laura Lee Bell proudly embraces the Bell family legacy. And I think she has every reason to. She is not simply benefiting from what her parents created. She has also spent decades contributing to that legacy through her own work as Christine Blair. William J. Bell and Lee Phillip Bell built two of the most iconic soap opera franchises in television history, while also raising a family. Laura Lee now sees that accomplishment through the eyes of an adult, a mother, and a longtime member of the daytime television industry. Maybe she did not always fully appreciate the magnitude of what her parents accomplished, but today she seems to understand it in a way she never could as a child. And I think there is something very touching about that. Laura Lee Bell may have been born into soap opera royalty, but she has spent more than 4 decades creating her own place within that legacy. And in my opinion, her parents would have every reason to be proud. Not only because she continues to honor the Bell name, but because she has become an important part of the history they started. Sometimes it takes years to truly understand what our parents gave us. Laura Lee Bell may be one of the few people who can say that she eventually understood the extraordinary scale of her parents' achievements, from both sides. First as their daughter, and later as someone who stepped directly into the world they created. And perhaps that is why her appreciation feels even more meaningful today.